The fourth type of socialism we will discuss is scientistic socialism, social engineering. This is a particularly perverse type of socialism. It is the type supported or defended by intellectuals, all of those who in general believe themselves to be smarter than their fellow human beings, because they have studied for more years, because they know more, because they are more cultured, because they are more refined. They consider themselves superior, and therefore with spectacular arrogance, they believe they are entitled to design the lives of all ordinary citizens. Scientistic socialism is extremely dangerous, because ultimately, as Hayek explains in his book titled, for that very reason, The Fatal Conceit, The Errors of Socialism, the gravest sin human beings in general, and scientists in particular, can commit is the sin of pride, of intellectual conceit, of believing we are so smart that we can do whatever we want with society. And this temptation is unusually strong for intellectuals, for my colleagues, for those of us who study, for those of us who devote our lives to analysis, research and science. Therefore, though it is sad to say it, we must be perpetually on our guard against scientists. It is not at all uncommon to find a dictator behind an apparently benevolent scientist who has made great contributions to humanity. And this is something you can see throughout the history of thought, beginning with the ancient Greece of the first philosophers. Consider Plato. His ideal was Sparta, the militaristic society organized from above. He looked down on entrepreneurs, craftsmen and merchants. What does Plato say? He speaks of a militaristic, communistic society, in which all resources are made available to everyone, and in which the family does not exist. Who needs the bourgeois family? Instead, the women are available to all the men. There is a pool of women, and every day each man goes to the one he wants, and then the children arrive. And fortunately, Plato reasons, there are no family relationships or loyalty, no mom and dad, and the children are sons and daughters of the state. Incidentally, if anyone is born crippled or disabled, or will not conceivably be able to serve in the army, not strong for instance, he is thrown over a cliff and killed, and then there is one less mouth to feed. And that is a system perfectly and rationally devised by the philosopher king. That is, the smartest and most intelligent person, the scientist. And who is that? Well, Plato, of course. He says, yes, it is me. I am the one who designs and defines the ideal and imposes it by force. Who is more entitled than I, the smartest person, to organize society from above? And Sparta was based on such a model. Do not be surprised. For example, who saw the movie 300? It is based on a comic book. Do you remember the movie? Well, notice the subliminal message it sends. Who are the good guys? Who are the ones that save Greece? Well, the 300 Spartans, of course. And what do they look like? They are portrayed as muscular. And when they are on their way to Thermopylae, in the mountain pass, they come face to face with the Athenian soldiers. How does the movie depict the Athenian soldiers? Like morons. You there, what is your profession? I'm a potter, sir. And you, what is your profession? Sculptor, sir. Sculptor. Ha! They are shown as little less than idiots. And who does the movie compare them with? 300 strong and confident soldiers. The message is, these are the ones who will save Greece. So Sparta is the ideal, and entrepreneurial, commercial Athens, which is relatively more oriented toward the free market and democracy, is belittled and dismissed. Well, the presentation of the movie corresponds exactly with the intellectual model of the great philosophers who have gone down in history. Socrates, for instance, was tremendously arrogant, and of course he was corrupting the young people of his time. There is no doubt about it. The corruption consisted of saying to them, do not follow in the footsteps of your parents. So, your father wants you to carry on the wax candle or flute business? No, do not do that. Instead, come with me and seek virtue. These philosophers never understood the spontaneous market order, which made it possible for Athens to prosper in a commercial environment throughout the Mediterranean, and to create such wealth that, Among other things, people like Socrates were able to live without lifting a finger. One of Socrates' main disciples was Plato. What a scoundrel! Read his contributions. And Aristotle, who fell between two stools, was not trustworthy either. To begin with, what was Aristotle? He was the private tutor to the son of the greatest tyrant of his time, Philip of Macedon, who did away with the climate of liberty in the Greek city-states. Furthermore, Aristotle's pupil was insane, a madman, a dictator, and a tyrant. Alexander the Great, another scoundrel. It is true that Aristotle defended private property without much conviction, but he failed to understand the spontaneous market order. According to Aristotle, a city-state with over 100,000 inhabitants would be unworkable, because it would be impossible to organize from above. He did not grasp the spontaneous market order. So the first philosophers, many of whom were geniuses in the area of epistemology and so on, did not understand even the rudiments of the spontaneous market order. Their adversaries understood it much better. The much reviled sophists had a much better understanding of that spontaneous order, as did some other philosophers like Xenophon, but the best-known philosophers missed it. The fact is, the scientistic conceit that fuels the social engineering type of socialism is as old as the development of human thought. In modern times, this conceit takes the form of what is known as Cartesian rationalism, or constructivist rationalism, which is the idea that human reason is capable of anything. Perhaps the clearest illustration of this is the French Revolution. Religious images in churches were destroyed and replaced with the goddess of reason. Human reason was deified. Nowadays, we place so much trust in human reason that we believe science holds the answer to all of our problems. We think technology, engineering, and the advancements made in the natural sciences can be applied to the social sphere, and that with this approach and a series of formulas, we can develop a social engineering plan that will permit us to organize society efficiently and more justly. What is the crucial error of social engineering? It is simply the assumption that the practical, dispersed information, which human beings are constantly generating as they act, can be created in a context of coercion and then transmitted to a machine, a supercomputer, or to a committee of experts who would then digest, analyze, and structure it and be able to scientifically and far more efficiently organize society and achieve any goal. Scientistic socialism is particularly dangerous. First, due to the temptation scientists succumb to when we think we are smarter than everyone else. And second, because we think we are entitled to impose on the rest of society what we believe is correct. So people are told they must or must not smoke, and that what they must do is going to be imposed on them by force. They are told whether or not to take drugs and drink alcohol, and at what times. Do not do this, because it is not good for you. We need only switch on or listen to any news program. There is always the same format. A certain problem has been detected, and is due to people's stupidity. But never fear, this agency or committee or government department is on the job, and with tax money, we will inform, educate, and teach people. And if that is not enough, we will impose a solution by force. This rationalism that deifies reason is in error. Furthermore, it fuels all the other types of socialism. Curiously, any dictator, whether Hitler, Stalin, or anyone else you can think of, has invariably had an entourage of scientists and intellectuals who have justified his actions and sucked up to him. Always. Dictators have always found scientific justifications and social engineering for the atrocities they have committed. Even very firmly established scientists who have done an immense service to humanity, like Einstein, have provided support. If you read Einstein's remarks on economic and political topics, you will see that they are truly pitiful. He knew nothing about economics. He was an expert on quantum physics, mathematics, and the theory of relativity, but he knew absolutely nothing about the spontaneous market order and how society works. On page 82 of my book, Socialism, Economic Calculation and Entrepreneurship, you will find a list of the 5 errors of the social engineer. This is an important section. Please take the time to analyze the list carefully. I'm not going to cover it here, but when I ask you about it later, please be prepared to answer. Now we come to a hodgepodge, otherwise we could go on forever, of other types of socialism that have emerged in the real world. For instance, Christian or solidarity-based socialism. Well, many people of good faith, or who are religious and belong to any of the Christian denominations, pursue the ideal of the salvation of the human race and eternal life, and seek to achieve it in advance here on earth. Why not? And they seek to advance this ideal or objective by force, which is the essential characteristic of socialism. We read in the Gospels that the first Christians lived by communist principles. They shared everything and distributed things according to need. That is true, but they did so voluntarily, not because anyone imposed it on them from above. So if someone voluntarily decides to set up a commune and gets people to voluntarily sign up for that life, then there is no problem. That would be part of the market economy. The problem arises when the attempt is made to impose such a life by force. Then we say, it is justified. We will develop a liberation theology. But what does liberation mean here? It means we are going to justify guerrilla warfare. It means machine guns, guerrilla fighters, and terrorists to impose the ideal by force, like in the Civil War in El Salvador, for instance. There are good guys and bad guys, and I am here with my gun to kill the landowner and take his land, because what he has done is unjust. Well, let us analyze the property rights in the case and see if they are legitimate, and we will do so objectively, in a civilized manner, in the courts of justice, and the truth will be clear. But let us not call for a revolution, the worst atrocities conceivable, the use of physical violence and systematic coercion, and justify it all perhaps in the name of Jesus Christ. That is what Christian, solidarity-based socialism or liberation theology encourages. A true heresy. There is also Syndicalist Socialism. It involves the attempt to forcibly impose a system in which companies are owned by the workers who run them. This type of socialism is especially perverse and chaotic. One person may work at a wealthy company with lots of capital and receive a very large share in the distribution of income. Another may work at a dairy with 4 cows and receive very little. And why should some people receive more than others? Where this kind of unionization occurs, barriers are immediately established. Hey, no one else can join my cooperative, because if more people join, I will get a smaller piece of the pie. Syndicalist socialism was attempted in the former communist Yugoslavia, and it was a dismal failure. Even the few coordinating links that remained by command in Soviet Russia disappeared, and the chaos was indescribable.